episode 12 of the Fit Pro podcast.
You can make a lot of progress in a short time if you're dedicated. I mean, I went from being too afraid to teach in public and thinking like, why would anyone care about what I have to say, to teaching within a matter of like 18 or 20 months, like to teaching at every single studio I'd wanted to teach at in San Francisco.
Hello listeners, before we get into the show, I just wanted to say a few words. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. If you haven't already, make sure you head to fitpropodcast.com, that is fitpropodcast.com, and leave a review on your favorite episode. Let the guests know how they went, let me know how I've gone. That being said, listeners, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the Fit Pro podcast, listeners. I am your host, Marvin Fayez, and today we have a very special guest. We got Brett Larkin. Brett Larkin is a yoga teacher on YouTube that has 2 million minutes a month all over the world. She uses yoga to teach you how to ignite your best self, and through the science of yoga, she has created an empire, I would say, in the online space. But I'll let Brett take over for a second. Brett, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
And take a moment, Brett, and let the listeners know who you are personally, and then we'll get into the show a little bit more in depth.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I teach yoga online, which seems like a crazy concept, but more people should do it. It's really fun. I have a membership site that I sell. I have a lot of different things, actually, that I sell, and I think that's something we can talk about, like diverse revenue streams if you're looking to have a career in the fitness business. But I sell a private membership site. I sell products, props. I sell a combination of physical goods bundled with digital goods through my website, and then I also sell retreats. I'm also, I think, the big thing I'm really passionate about is, you said it, right? Helping people really ignite their best self. So it's not just about like yoga for relaxation, although that's great, or yoga to calm down. That's also great. What I'm really trying to tap into with my community is yoga to spark, yoga to ignite your most successful, happy, uplifted self. My membership community is called Uplifted. So it's really about taking your practice off the mat and stepping into your full potential and using yoga as a vehicle to do that. Because I think yoga often just gets categorized as like, oh yeah, the relaxing thing. And my classes are very relaxing, but there's this deeper underlining message there. And this is something I personally am always working on too, is, the reason I'm so passionate about yoga and this practice is because I want abundance in my life and because I'm trying to step into the most aligned version of who I am so I can give the most, receive the most. And I want that for everyone in my community too, to just be kind of like operating at the apex of their potential. I think yoga is the best tool we have to be the best human we can be. So yeah, that's who I am, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Thanks for that great intro. You're very passionate, and I want to find out why. So why did you choose yoga to begin with, and who were you before yoga, or have you always been a part of it?
No, so before yoga, I like to say like it's like thinking back to a hazy nightmare. I honestly don't really know how I functioned. I'm someone who had very high anxiety in my life. Anxiety is also a trait in my family. And I was a mess. I was so reactive to everything. When I think back to my life before yoga, it's sort of a blur, honestly. And that's why I can really relate to whether it's someone doing my class on YouTube or someone new who enters my community who's like struggling with anxiety or struggling to even just feel centered on a day-to-day basis, because I was completely out there, because I'm very high energy. And at that point, that energy wasn't channeled anywhere, right? It was just all channeled into worry, frankly, worry about the future. I was a dancer from a young age, so I was always really connected with my body physically. I'm sure many listeners can relate to that if they're passionate about fitness. I was always dancing. I was always doing Pilates as well as I got older. And, it was only because I was actually dating someone at the time who was really into meditation that I tried meditating, mainly to impress him or to, like to keep him interested or something. And he was the one who really pushed me to try yoga. He said, you dance, you love, moving your body. Why don't you, and now you're meditating. Why don't you fuse the two and try yoga? And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, yoga's for wimps. That's like some hippie weird, like, I was like, I'll think about it, but like secretly I was like, no. So that's a little glimpse into who I was before yoga. And, luckily, eventually I tried it, and I really love sharing this story because the first video I ever did was an online video for yoga. Eventually I went to a studio and got hooked, and there's a whole story there. But the first thing I ever tried was a yoga video that I'd found on Yoga Journal. And I did that video once, and then I did it again the next day, and then I did it again the next day. And then I knew I was really getting hooked because I was doing the same little online video every single day. And I was going on a trip to visit my friend for the weekend, and I called her and I was like, do you have space for me to set down my yoga mat? Because I'm doing this video right now and I need to do it every day. And she was like, what is she talking about? But that's when I was like, I think I'm really into this. So it's really fun because I have one sequence in particular on YouTube that's especially popular that's for beginners, and, kind of reminds me of that sequence, and people get really hooked to it and they start doing it kind of every day. And I'm like, I was you, like I had this whole experience. So it's really fun to see it come full circle.
Awesome. And so you became hooked on yoga. And when was the moment that you decided that this is something that I can make a living from?
Oh, well, that was like a decade or more later. So the first step was to do yoga teacher training. So some of your listeners may be familiar with that, or they may have already done it. I'm about to launch now my own yoga teacher training, which is going to be predominantly online, which is really cool. But, I got hooked on yoga. I decided I wanted to train, but not to teach, just to sort of deepen my own practice. And I think I was in a lot of denial about how much I wanted to teach and how much I really wanted to share for a very long time. So even when I was going through yoga teacher training, it was just sort of like, oh, this is to deepen my practice and something to do on the side. Of course, I was working full time the whole time I was doing it. And, of course, there was this little voice inside me that was saying, actually, no, I really want to teach. I really want to teach. But I didn't listen to that voice. And I ended up moving across the country and, leaving that studio I loved where I used to teach, really missing my teacher. I had one teacher I really loved, but I had recorded some of his classes, his audio classes, like sneakily. I think this was like pre-iPhone probably too. So I don't even know how I did it. I was a sneaky ninja. So I was like doing classes to his voice without him there. And I was like, oh, I wish I had access to him. Meanwhile, this small voice inside me kept saying I wanted to teach, but I had no self-confidence. I had no courage to teach. San Francisco, where I'd ended up moving, had, similar to New York, just like a super strong team of teachers and roster of people who taught. And I just thought no one would ever want to study with me. There's like so many yoga teachers out there. Why would anyone ever want to take class with me? And I was trying to actually gather the courage to approach studios and maybe audition at some studios. And that's when I decided to put something online because I was too scared to kind of like really put myself out there and teach in a studio. So putting something online for me was like the easy cop-out route to just like experiment with, putting a sequence together and teaching it and, getting into it a little bit. And for a lot of people that might sound weird, but for me, that was less scary than like going and teaching a public class or auditioning to teach a public class. And that first video I put on YouTube is still up, and it's still one of my most popular videos, which is so crazy. So that's kind of how it began.
Awesome. And how long ago was that, Brett?
So that was maybe now 4 years ago. So not even that long ago, maybe more than that.
Even that long ago, you're still a baby.
No, maybe 5, 6 years ago.
Six,
but
seven.
no, but like max 6. And I say that to really inspire people because you can make a lot of progress in a short time if you're dedicated. I mean, I went from being too afraid to teach in public and thinking like, why would anyone care about what I have to say, to teaching within a matter of like 18 or 20 months, like to teaching at every single studio I'd wanted to teach at in San Francisco. Like even the glam, glitzy studios where I was like, I will never get a job there. Like I taught at all of them, and I built up YouTube, and then I stopped teaching at all of them because YouTube was taking off and doing so well, and I wanted to focus my energy there. So, you know, one thing I really preach and, you know, everything I preach, it's like I'm saying to myself as well. Like that's why I love my membership group and my community, because it's like we're just all learning together. They're constantly inspiring me like every day. But it's like, get into action now. Like get into action immediately if you think you want to do something. I'm working on a book as well, of course, because I'm insane, just cause. And
always busy.
always, you know, what? Always busy. And one of the things, one of the scenes in the book, I talk about filming that first YouTube video. I was on a casual friend had a rooftop, and it was like the only place I could think of to film. So I like forced this guy to let me borrow his roof that he shared with his neighbors, by the way. So I was using it at like 6 a.m. I didn't have a camera, so I had like kind of stolen one from where I worked, because we had like a camera in the office for the weekend. And like, I mean, like this thing, like I was using like a stolen camera on a roof that wasn't mine.
Just real hood.
Yeah, like 6 a.m, you know, and it's just like, it was, I don't know what I was thinking, but I got into action right away, even though I didn't have any resources, and I didn't have a place to film. I didn't have a camera. I didn't have anything. And that still didn't stop me from, you know, trying this out and listening to this little voice that was like, you should try this. And so, you know, wherever you are, I always just really encourage, it's like, act now, think later. Like it's only through getting into action. And this translates to the physical yoga practice, right? Because it's through movement that we gather our motivation, that we find our meaning. I always say, like, the mat is your mentor. The mat is going to lead you to what matters most. And that's because we need to move both in, you know, life and on the mat to kind of like activate our brain. I think people think like you need to think everything through first and then act. And I'm like, no. You need to act, and then everything will make sense once you get into action and you start taking those steps.
And that really actually brings back a quote to my mind of start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And it's very true for anybody getting involved in the fitness space, really. You can do as much planning as you want, but you're only going to see, you're only going to learn quicker by doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Totally. And if this is helpful to listeners, this is a little tip I like to share. It's like, I think a lot of people don't get started because they're like, oh, well, that first video won't be as good as I want it to be, or it'll be bad, right? And
it doesn't need to be good.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't need to be good, but this is like the little other tip I like to share is like, you're always going to want your stuff to be better forever. So it never stops. So it's not an excuse to not get into action. So like last week, I did a 3-day shoot. I had 2 camera angles. I had 6 professional lights. But compared to what I have done in the past, I mean, it was like outstanding. And the whole time I was like, oh, I wish I had a slider. I wish I had that like other light that had bright, you know, like you're always going to be wanting to take it to the next level. And that never goes away. So just like embrace it and get into action now. You know what I mean? Because I just like laugh at myself. And, you know, I think for when I started thinking of it that way, I was like, you know, there's no excuse just to like rock out and do it the best I can now, because this voice that always wants to improve and make it better and perfectionize everything is like never going to go away. So, it's like a never ending process, which is awesome too. But, yeah, so there's just get into action right now.
Just get into action. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Just take the moment and make it perfect. Because I mean, it is very, very, very true. I mean, it's very much the same with this podcast. I didn't have any guests lined up, but I said, look, I'm going to be interviewing someone in a week's time. It'll be someone. I contacted so many people. I wasn't even ready. I didn't have the software I have now. I didn't have the equipment I had now. I didn't have the website. I had nothing up. I think over the weekend before it actually debuted, I created a website. I did all the other little bits, but the main thing that I had to get done was do the interview. So I can totally relate, and I think a lot of the listeners can relate to that moment where they've gone, you know what? I'm just going to do it, and we'll fix it along the way. We'll build a parachute on the way down. Because I find, personally, that's the easiest way to get my ass into gear. And it definitely can help rush the process along. But another point you also said about always wanting to be better. You're always going to want to be better. We're our own biggest critics. And I do it every day. I look in the mirror and I go, wow, you could be so much better. You used to do this, you used to do that. And versus, again, someone who hasn't done anything, you're already ahead, especially when it comes to creating content. You're already 2, 3, 400 steps ahead of the person that decides not to do it today. So with your entire business at the moment, Brett, because you said, let's put a rough estimate, you've been around 6 years. All right, you've been doing this 6 years. Do you feel you've now reached the point where you can do this full time?
Yes. The caveat is that I live in one of the most expensive cities in the world, which is San Francisco. So if I lived anywhere else, I mean, it would be like completely non-issue, like 6 months ago even. Because I live somewhere that's really expensive and, because of my husband's career and other elements, it looks like, I'm staying here. I haven't been as quick to, just dive in full-time yoga as maybe I would be if I lived anywhere else. So I still juggle, some corporate, some tech work from my old, former life. And that's something I've talked about on another podcast, actually, the Wellpreneur podcast, I think it's called. I talked about a lot on that show. I think when you're an entrepreneur, a lot of people are just like, oh, well, you should quit your job, or people see how busy I am and that I work 12-hour days and they're like, oh, well, you should just quit your job. But there's really two sides. There's two sides to every coin, right? Like, for example, because I don't live right now at the moment of this interview being recorded, things might change very quickly, but because I'm not 100% reliant on my yoga business income, because I do have other income coming in, it allows me a couple things. It allows me to reinvest a lot of money back into the business, which is something that I've wanted to do more of, right? I still haven't even done paid acquisition for my business. So I know that things can scale up, and I know all my metrics and everything really fast when I start to do that. But for example, I have started outsourcing more, like hiring more help. I used to edit every video myself. Now I have a rule. I'm not allowed to edit anything. I've made that a rule because it's just not a good use of my time. It's sad because I actually really enjoy it. But when you're building a business that you're scaling and is going to become bigger, you're just I need to start extricating myself from all these parts of the business. And, I think it would be slower and harder for me to do that if I didn't have, again, multiple revenue streams. I think, building a business up while still doing other work on the side is a really great way to go. Another huge pro to that is that you feel a lot of creative freedom. You're not dependent, especially in the early years. It's so important to be able to explore and kind of figure out your style and figure out what you want to do and not be thinking about oh, well, what do people want to buy right now? Or letting kind of money dictate what you do. I've always been able to really separate that, with my yoga business, and just everything I put out or sell is just purely because I'm crazy passionate about it. And obviously I've refined over time to sort of match what I'm crazy passionate about to what my customers and community have told me they want, right? That's where you kind of need to bridge the gap, and it can take years to figure that out. I'm still learning, still optimizing, but I'm sorry, I forgot your original question, but I think doing a hybrid situation for people, especially in fitness, because I meet other yoga teachers in San Francisco who just teach yoga, not even online, just in studios. And my heart goes out to them. I'm just like, how are you guys supporting yourself? I think when you choose to have a career in fitness, you really should start thinking about like your empire, your brand right from the beginning, even if that sounds crazy, and really think about, what's the best use of your time. Before we started recording this interview, we talked a little bit. I mentioned how I kind of like had stopped teaching in person, and I'm considering stopping teaching in person like completely in terms of like local studios and stuff. And at the end of the day, it's just like when you put a monetary value on an hour of my time, like filming something or running another aspect of my business is just such a bigger payoff than teaching in person, that at a certain point you kind of have to weigh, whether that makes sense. So, at the time, right now I still do it because I love the sense of community, and they let me film some classes there with some deals I've worked out. So, I mean, it's kind of working, but I think when you choose a career in fitness, you are signing up to be an entrepreneur, whether you want to or not. So having another job on the side is super helpful. And especially if you're not interested in like running your own business, definitely keep another job on the side and just do your fitness stuff for fun. But I'm definitely pro hybrid, taking your time. And, people have different approaches to this, but that's always been my approach.
Yeah, man, I totally agree, because that's my approach as well. And I know some people can burn the bridges and just like burn the ships and go from broke. Personally, I couldn't do that because, I like having that creative freedom. And I think it's very, very important. And I like what you said when you said that people that enter the fitness space generally become entrepreneurs, because there is so many avenues. There is so many avenues, so many revenue streams. And while we're on the point of revenue streams, what are your main income streams at the moment? How do you make your money, Brett?
Sure. So my biggest income stream, and this changed recently, is my membership site. I was very hesitant about launching a membership site. It was something I thought about in the back of my mind for a long time, but I thought it would just be too much work. So I never wanted to do it. And I thought, having the sort of obligation of always having to like take care of people every month. And I don't know, it just was a turnoff for me for some reason. And it's so yoga, right? Because it's like what we're resisting is exactly what we need. It's exactly what we need to learn. It's the gift. And of course, my membership site has just blown me away. My community was sort of craving it. I could tell there was like a large part of the community that wanted to go deeper. And to let people know when I say community, because people might be like, what is she talking about? I'm talking about, I run a lot of private Facebook groups, which I think are also great for anyone in the fitness industry. Like if you're not, and I tell this to all my friends in the fitness, I'm like, if you're not running private Facebook groups or really working to grow and engage your community and build your email list, like you're nuts, because that's where, your business is. So, I have people who are just like fanatical, enthusiastic, awesome, incredible people in my groups, and I could tell they wanted to go deeper. I also found technology I really liked, so I launched my membership site on this thing called VHX, which enables people to, download and own my videos on Apple TV and their phone and everything. So anyway, launched the membership site. That's now reoccurring monthly revenue, which is also a game changer for my business, because before then I was kind of in constant, what I call like launch mode, right? You're like constantly launching a new product or a new service and always selling, and, or I'd have months where I did amazing, but then it's like the next month you're always starting from square one. So anything with reoccurring revenue is obviously incredible if you can make it work. And for me right now, that's like my number one revenue stream, and it's really working. I'm hoping that's going to be soon to be surpassed by the yoga teacher training. So I'm about to offer and launch a yoga teacher training online, which if it does the numbers I expect, it will definitely be my highest revenue stream, because it's going to be such a high price point, right? Because yoga teacher trainings are like a couple $1,000s. But as of right now, it's like I'm projecting the yoga teacher training to be the highest. Currently, the membership's the highest. And then after that, I'd say probably retreats. And then after that, like my suite of like digital products And then after that, my suite of digital coupled with physical products, meaning like I'm shipping people yoga blocks with a video about how to use yoga blocks. I think that's kind of how it breaks down. And then it trickles all the way down to like affiliate revenue from other businesses I work with and, YouTube ad revenue and stuff like that.
So you're a true entrepreneur. You've got multiple sources of income coming in, and it's really refreshing to hear that you're not stuck in launch mode like a lot of people get stuck in. How did you make that switch and go, all right, I'm going to get out of launch mode and I'm going to start creating some recurring revenue?
It was something I resisted for so long. I think it was something I had always, there were a couple things that kept pushing towards it. One was that I was selling my videos one-off. So sometimes people get really passionate about one of my videos and they want to buy it. So they could buy it through my site or they can buy it through my mobile app where they can download it. But it's like these constant little purchases. And I just thought it would be better, easier for everyone, especially when I run these challenges like that are several days long. That's another thing I've done that's really worked well for my business is like getting people together in a challenge. So instead of all just doing one-off videos here and there, we're like united in a series of videos that we're going through together. So sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was your original question? I'm like jumping all over the place.
That's all good. The original question was...
Oh, the membership, right. So with the membership, everyone can just download everything, right? Like it's just like instead of paying a la carte for like all these little videos, you just get all the videos at once. And instead of like wondering what video to do each day, there's always a training plan in the membership. So people always know what class they're doing when, and we're going through it as a group. So there's this great sense of community and motivation. So why I finally decided to do it was because I'd done my spring detox challenge and it did really well. Like the community was so super engaged. I was also live streaming every single day of the spring detox challenge. So again, people who are into fitness and looking to just like the easiest way to start, like even easier than making a YouTube video, it's like just live stream from your phone. Just use Periscope or Facebook Live and just start doing workouts or talking to people. It's a real game changer and, like forces you to get into action right away. So I love live streaming personally. I think it's also been great for my business because again, people buy stuff because they like you and they feel connected to you. So live streaming is one of the most powerful ways you can make that happen instantly. So the live stream in the community from the detox challenge was so strong that I was like, oh my gosh, these people like need a place to go next. Like we all need to keep hanging out. I was like, how are we all going to keep hanging out? And the challenge was ending. And I had sort of in my plan to do the membership site around August, I think was where I had sort of slated it in. It was sort of in my vision, right, of like something that was coming. But in the after the spring, obviously it was the spring, detox challenge was spring, it was like, oh my gosh, this needs to happen right now. I felt the community was so engaged. Some other YouTube people, including Sean, who I think you've had on your show, like we're all using this platform that everyone told me really good things about. Because, technology plays a huge part in all of this, right? Like how do you serve your videos? How do you create an experience for people? That I kind of think of myself as like an experience designer. One of my big affirmations that I'm always writing is that like I create incredible, unique and healing experiences for people and I'm rewarded in abundance. That's something I write and say all the time. So, and to me, an experience is like a class, right? It could be like a 15-minute yoga class. It could be a week-long retreat like the one I just hosted. Or it could be, becoming a member and like going through my membership process, right? It's all of these things are an experience. So in designing the optimal experience, I was always very frustrated with the technology available to me because I wanted like a seamless experience for my users where they could download their videos anywhere. And honestly, that's new. Like the service that we all use, like Sean switched to it recently and I'm using it now as well, is is like the fact that you can even do that is new. And even it has limitations, things I wish it did differently or better. And I harass their tech team on like a weekly basis and they love me. But yeah, so it was sort of like a fusion of like the technology coming together, the group being really motivated. And I just, again, talk about getting into action. I was like, this has to happen now. And I literally launched the membership site, which I was supposed to do in August. I launched it in April or May. I think I launched it in April. I think, and like in 72 hours. It was literally like, I was just like, this is happening. I like uploaded, I have 500 hours of content. Like it was like computer uploading all hours of the night, like just insanity. And I just made it happen. I was like, this has to happen right now. And somehow it did. And I have no idea how it did. And yeah, and it's awesome. And it like, I exceeded my revenue goal the first month. I was just like in shock. So, yeah, that's the membership. And, now that I have it, I'm so grateful that I gave it a shot. And, another huge piece of it was I started outsourcing. So now I have someone who is really managing the YouTube side of things, which really frees me up to focus more on the membership. And in terms of managing, I mean like just doing all the back end, like grunt work that's involved with that, like the scheduling the videos and all the annotations and descriptions, like all that stuff. So again,
stuff.
You need help, right? And like by bringing him on, and I like email him all the time sometimes, and I'm just like, thank you so much, because without that support, I wouldn't be able to give anything to the membership, right? I'd be spread too thin. So, getting the support you need as well is like a huge step. And also deciding like how big this business is that you want to run. That's something I'm still kind of figuring out. I'm like, is this a business that I just want to run completely by myself that's sort of at like this level of income? Or do I want to like double or triple that, but maybe have like a business partner, and co-run it with someone else who's like a behind the scenes person who's helping me. Cause again, what I love about YouTube and the way I run my business is that I get to wear like my business tech nerdy hat and my yoga spiritual, hat at the same time. But the reality is, as the business gets bigger, like no one can do everything, right? So yeah, that's something I'm in the process of sort of exploring right now and trying to answer internally, right? Like how big do I want this to be, and sort of what's the game plan?
Before I let you leave, listeners, how good is the audio? We have stepped it up a notch. It sounds great. Let me know what you think on Twitter, FitPro Podcast, and send me a tweet. Send Brett a tweet. Let us know how this episode went. This will be a 2-part episode because so much value. If you haven't already, head to fitpropodcast.com and leave us a review on this episode. It means a lot to me and to Brett. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. The numbers are going up. It's looking good. Keep up all of the great work. And share this podcast around. I feel that we provide amazing value and amazing insights into all industries at the moment. So share this with a friend. If you don't share this episode with your friend, I feel like you don't like your friends and you don't want them to be successful. So if you want your friends to be successful, share this episode, share this podcast, and we will see you on the next episode.